As you may have seen, the University of Michigan agreed to a settlement last month of $490 million paid to more than 1,000 survivors of sexual abuse by Dr. Robert Anderson, the sports physician who practiced at the school for decades up until 2003. And before I continue, I should note that much of what we're about to talk about over the next several minutes is disturbing. Among the many people Anderson preyed on was Chuck Christian, who played football at University of Michigan from '77 to 1980. 2 years ago, he publicly came forward to talk about how Anderson made him and his fellow players undergo unnecessary, painful rectal exams as part of their routine physical, and how they were all told they couldn't play otherwise. But it was not until 2 years ago that Christian learned of an investigation into the past actions of Anderson, who at that point had died. That investigation was brought about by former Michigan wrestler Tad DeLuca, who wrote to the school's athletic director in 2018, and the school started quietly looking into things. But that was actually DeLuca's second attempt to sound the alarm after he claimed he was thrown off the team for trying to bring up the issue to his then coach and then athletic director back in 1975, 2 years before Christian's abuse started. Chuck Christian, now an artist based in Randolph, Massachusetts, joins me. Chuck, it's really good to meet you. Thank you for your time tonight.
Nice meeting you. My pleasure.
When was the first time you ever told anybody about what Anderson did to you?
Well, when it first happened my freshman year, I spoke to some upperclassmen to see if that was normal because I'd never experienced anything like that. I've never been penetrated like that by a doctor before. So I spoke with the upperclassmen and they said, oh yeah, that's a normal physical here at Michigan. And that's when, that was my first experience with Anderson.
So what was the point in your life where you realized it wasn't just a normal thing, but it was criminal assault, rape, essentially? When did you first realize that?
I was 60 years old. I'm 62 now, so that was 2 years ago. And I was in the hospital because I have prostate cancer and it metastasized throughout my body. And I'm in, I'm in pretty tough shape right now, honestly. But my friend called me 2 years ago and he said to me, he said, Chuck, you remember the physicals that Dr. Anderson gave us? I said, yeah, well, of course I can't forget those. And he said, well, what he was doing to us was illegal. And that's when I found out that I had been raped.
Because of these rapes by Anderson, you didn't see a doctor for a pretty significant part of your adult life. Is that correct? For how long?
That's correct. I would avoid doctors no matter what. My wife kept trying to get me to go to see a doctor, but I wouldn't go because I didn't trust doctors at that point. So I decided that, whatever it was, I could just tough it out and I'd be all right. So that's why I never went to see a doctor.
And when you finally did, my understanding is when you finally did, I think in your mid-40s, when your wife essentially pushed you, I think because of high blood pressure or something. From what I've read, you didn't stay long. Why?
What happened was I went to I was actually having trouble with my prostate at that point. I was having blood in my urine and I went to see a urologist about it. And when I went to see the urologist, he said that he wanted to do a digital exam. And to me, a digital exam sounds harmless. I'm thinking like CD players, DVD players, things like that. So I'm not thinking anything painful. But my wife was in the room with me and then the doctor went over into the corner and he grabbed the glove and he put it on and he snapped it, pow. And when he snapped it, I said, oh no. And I jumped up out of my seat and I pointed at him. I said, you're not gonna do that to me. Nobody's ever gonna do that to me again. And my wife said, Chuck, you need to stick around and find out what's going on with your prostate. I said, oh no, I know what he's gonna do. That's not gonna happen again. I'm a 45-year-old man now. I'm not an 18-year-old kid. And I walked out.
So when was it? How much later was it? Was it not until you were 60 that you got this prostate cancer diagnosis?
About 11 years later, I found out that I had prostate cancer because I was getting up 8 to 10 times a night to go to the bathroom. Yeah. And after my wife got me to go to the doctor, I realized that I had prostate cancer and it had metastasized throughout all of my bones, spine, tailbone, shoulders, everything.
It's hard to ask this, but you've been forthcoming. What's your prognosis, Chuck?
Well, when it first um, when I first got the prognosis from the doctor, I had a team of three doctors, and two of them gave me 3 years to live. So I immediately fired them. And I turned to the third doctor. I said, how many years are you giving me? And he said, I'm just going to be with you as long as I need to be, Chuck. And I said, okay, fine, good answer. And that's how I found out I had 3 years to live. And now it's been almost 6 years now, and I'm still plugging away.
Well, I hope you keep plugging, even though, when reading about your story, it seems not only, did this doctor sexually assault you? I hope these doctors are wrong, but he could have ended up killing you too. Did Bo Schembechler was your coach, and
Yes.
for non-football fans, one of the most legendary college coaches ever. There's pretty decent evidence, including, I think, from his stepson, that like the Joe Paternos of the world, Schembechler knew what was going on and just stood by silently and let it happen.
Yes, he did. Bo would brag about knowing everything that was going on with his team. And so he knew exactly what Anderson was doing to us, but he never stopped it. And that's what really broke my heart. And that's what we needed. We just needed one person to stand up for us to stop this thing, but nobody did.
I mentioned in the introduction, Chuck, that Michigan recently paid a $500 million settlement to more than 1,000 people who'd been abused, violated by this Anderson psychopath. But you're not satisfied that that's, from what I understand, a decent level of accountability. What's missing in your estimation?
The thing is, Michigan has apologized for what Anderson has done to us, but Michigan never apologized or taking responsibility for what they allowed and protected Anderson to do to us.
And you're convinced that it wasn't just Schembechler, but others in the administration that turned a blind eye to all this stuff?
Definitely. The coaches, all of the coaches knew, all of the trainers, the athletic director knew, everybody knew what Anderson was doing, but nobody stopped it.
I assume people who follow are upright and follow the news, USC, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, University of Michigan. When I read your story and read about your courage, I said to myself, good, this will mean it's less likely to happen in the future. But then I step back and say, when there's the kind of power differential that there is between a legendary coach, an all-powerful coach, and a teenage kid who, how does this ever stop?
I think, first of all, there needs to be a third party involved, not a coach, not a trainer.
Meaning somebody you can go to?
Somebody that we can go to, that the athletes can go to if they have any questions about what's being done, or if they feel uncomfortable about anything that's taking place. If they had somebody like that, that could squash it pretty much overnight. But because a lot of times players will go to the assistant coaches and trainers, but the head coach has the power to get rid of them, so they're not gonna fight for us, not for the athletes.
So what's your message to survivors? What's your message to people who've suffered this kind of pain?
First of all, I would like to see all of the men who have been violated to start going to see a doctor. Do not do like I did. I waited too late to go, and now I'm fighting for my life every day. I have a time bomb in my body that's waiting to go off at any point. And I just want the men to go ahead and get prostate exams so that, and it doesn't have to be a digital exam. There are blood tests that can be taken where you don't have to be feel re-violated again. So that's what I would say for the men out there. Also, for anybody that's been sexually assaulted, first of all, I want them to know that they have done nothing to be ashamed of. And that's what happens so often, is that the predator uses shame to keep the victims quiet. And the average age of a man to tell what happened to them is 52. And at age 52, a lot of damage has occurred in that man's life. But I just want everyone to know that, listen, it's not your fault. What happened to you is not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of the predator. And that's what I would tell him.
It's a really important message. And I'll say to you, Chuck, that I just hope your doctors continue to be wrong. And I really thank you for spending the time with your message and your story tonight. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Hail to
it.
the victims.